Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&As, so let me get my hat on. And let's get to this first question. Alright. In an older video you recommended HST after your novice program for people whose goals are hypertrophy. What are your thoughts on the strategic deconditioning part of the program? I believe they recommend 9 days off instead of a traditional deload, with the idea that this will produce further muscle gains. Just seems like too much time off. Curious to hear what you think. Thanks. There's a reason I quit recommending HST after my novice program for people, because it changed over the years. The original HST that I remember was written over a decade ago, and they were setting it up a little bit different than the way it's kind of changed to in the last few years. Their template looks like it changed a little bit. Strategic deconditioning, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. I mean, I understand that they're trying to make it into a really complex term. You know, because even deloading, we don't need a complex term for deloading. Deloading could actually be named strategic deconditioning. I don't know, strategic, well, they could call it strategic deloading, because you're reducing the load. But the problem is that strategic deconditioning just takes time off. You don't do any lifting at all. And the problem with this is that, yeah, it might allow for slightly better recovery in theory. I don't think that time off gives better recovery than deloads. I just don't believe that. Because when you're deloading, you're using such minimal workloads that it shouldn't impact your recovery in any way. Meaning, people who train and are conditioned to training have a much higher work capacity in general. So for them, a deload, which might be seem like a heavy weight for some stronger people who are just new to the gym, but usually people who've been training for years have enough of a strength base that even their deloads working with 50% of their normal weights, it really shouldn't impact their recovery in any significant manner. Could, yeah, is it going to affect it a little bit? Of course. Any physical activity can affect recovery, but at a certain threshold, when workloads get to a certain threshold below your work capacity, they can actually just turn into active recovery. And the thing is with deloading, again, for example, let's say you do 185 on the bench press for a set of 10. That's your best 10 rep set. Well, you're dropping down to about 90 or 95 pounds for a 10 rep set, okay, on a deload. Believe me, if you bench over 200 pounds and somebody can do 185 for that, you're using a weight that's inconsequential to you. And in fact, it is getting blood flow to the muscles. It is stimulating and causing a little bit of protein disruption inside the muscle tissue, enough to re-spark the muscle protein synthesis to reinforce the previous training. You will grow more during a deload week than a week off completely. Unless people are on drugs. Now, people who are on anabolics might actually grow just as well in some cases. They might grow just as well on a strategic deconditioning week, basically a week off, versus a deload. But you are going to lose potential motor pattern strength. Meaning, because you're coming in and practicing the exercises even with a really light weight, you're maintaining technique better, you're maintaining motor patterns better, so that when you do come back after your deload or your time down, you're going to be stronger on those exercises, which means you're going to be able to go back to solid working sets with good form more quickly. And so it's worth more in the long term. I simply don't feel that time off is going to ever be equal to a deload in terms of its potential. You know, and that's just my take on it, and I think that's just common sense to me. But different people have their own views. All right, next question. Jason, what is the difference between an intolerance and an allergy? I'm the kind of person that can eat dairy, milk without problems, but wheat, oatmeal, corn, legumes make me feel sick, gastrointestinal problems, mucus and stool, bloating, diarrhea, etc. But some grains like white rice and legumes like peas are perfectly fine. I'm not celiac, so I don't have the symptoms. All right. Very briefly, the difference between an intolerance and an allergy. An allergy is an autoimmune response. Right? An allergy is your body's immune system, basically, in layman's terms, freaking out because of a foreign substance being put in there. Okay, that's what it is. It is an immune system response to something it perceives as a dangerous foreign invader, and it can become very dangerous. in the case of it, because it's an over response. Okay, it's immune system related. An intolerance usually means there's a problem with your digestive system itself digesting a food, meaning like if you're getting things like this, gastrointestinal distress, bloating, diarrhea, yeah, that's a sign of an intolerance. An allergy is a system-wide response, meaning if you eat a food you're allergic to, your throat might swell shut and stop you from breathing. Your body will break out in hives, your skin can itch from eating that food. It's a system-wide response. Okay, and food allergies can absolutely kill people. An intolerance will never kill you from a single bout unless you're really dehydrated and it causes diarrhea. Like the only way that a food intolerance will kill you is through dehydration from your GI tract because you're already dehydrated. Or if you sustain it for a prolonged period of time. So we're dealing with something in the digestive system versus something in the immune system. That's the difference. It sounds like you just have some sort of intolerance to some of these, and sometimes intolerances aren't about the food. All right, people need to understand that. Sometimes the intolerance that you have is to some foreign matter that's in the processing place where it went through. Even a grain silo and stuff has different things that can get contaminants in them. It could be a very specific pesticide being used on all these foods in the region where you're getting them from. Okay, that is irritating your digestive system personally. Now, most intolerances to a specific food, irrespective of where they come from or some contaminants, just means that your body doesn't have the enzymes to break them down. And people need to understand not all things require a special enzyme to break them down. So people say, well, what's the enzyme for this? Well, it doesn't always need to be one. You need enzymes to break things down that are unusual in structure. Lactose is a slightly different form of sugar than we're generally introduced to. It doesn't break down as easily purely from stomach acids. There are specific enzymes that are helpful in breaking the bonds in lactose to turn it into glucose, to turn it into something your body can absorb. Okay, and if you don't have those enzymes, you become lactose intolerant. Your body can't break that bond apart to digest it properly. All right, any food that your body is able to dissolve with acids or the enzymes you have enough for you to absorb it in the GI tract, you don't have that sort of intolerance to. Then again, not every food requires a special enzyme, just certain ones do. And our bodies have developed those enzymes because we've been exposed to those foods long enough that it's over time, just as part of the evolutionary process of developing enzymes to foods that our ancestors were exposed to long enough for enough thousands of years. So that's your big difference there. But it's most likely because those are very, very different foods that you just listed, it's very likely going to be something like maybe an intolerance to large amounts of fiber or an intolerance to some sort of pesticide going on, because those ones that you listed together like that, there's no common enzyme issue there. I suspect there's some contaminant from some place that you're getting them from, some specific pesticide or something else that you are personally intolerant of, and that's most likely your culprit. But it's definitely not a gluten type thing, because not only do you not have the symptoms, but some of those foods don't have gluten in them. All right, next question. Jason, why is it that every source of energy requirement guidelines for normal, active, or athletic people, the amount of calories recommended for maintenance is always around 16 kilocalories per pound for normal, untrained individuals most of the time? Yet I see people who saying they gain weight on 2,500 calories. I see a lot of men who are over 180 pounds saying they bulk with less than 3,000 calories. Seems that every fitness guy have a low energy requirement. What's up with that? See, I'm used to the opposite, brother. Because again, I run in powerlifting circles. I meet a lot of guys who have maintenance, I've even known drug-free guys who have maintenance over 4,000 calories. They can't even maintain their weight on less than that, and they have to force feed themselves. I think a lot of it has to do, the only way these people who are 180 plus pounds are bulking on these calories, there's a couple of possible things going on. Number one, they're not that physically active or athletic, meaning their idea of a workout might actually be a body part split. So they do one big movement per workout, one big exercise, maybe a few sets, and they go to a bunch of isolation movements. They're not burning that much energy. They're not putting that much demand on their body because they're splitting everything up. Whereas in someone who comes up and squat, benches, and deadlifts, every workout is creating a far larger energy need. Then it has to do with what their activity looks like between it. Do they do cardio? What does their job look like? Are they just a college student who goes and does a body part split 5 times a week, does no cardio, does no real physical activity, no active hobbies, no job? All right, that's why. Maintenance calories have to do with your overall activity, and those numbers are for oftentimes more athletic people. More athletic people. And if you're athletic, it's assumed you resistance train and do cardio. That you don't have days where you do nothing. You literally don't have days where you're just sitting down the entire day and never do anything. That's not athletic. That's a lot of it. Number 2, people are bad at tracking their calories. Plenty of people out there eat 300, 400, 500 calories a day more than they think they eat. Even people who believe they weigh all their food or track it, it's not uncommon for them to eat more calories than they think they do. All right, a lot of people are really bad with portion size estimates. They haven't really learned how to do it correctly. They have portion control problems. They probably eat more than they realize they do. Of course, people will say, well, I bet you do that too. No, not really. I eat a lot of calories. I lose weight on 3,500 calories. When I actually track my food and I go down to 3,500 calories, the scale starts going down. It's not uncommon for me to see almost a pound a week loss when I drop down that low. If I actually bother to track food. So the problem really though comes down to a lot of people just don't track their food. They're estimating things, and a lot of it has to do with their food choices. People who eat a fair amount of decently refined food, or they eat things like peanut butter, it's very, very easy to take a spoon and estimate like the amount of peanut butter you eat. 200 calories versus 400 calories might be indistinguishable to that person. And at a glance, they might actually look the same with a really high density food like that. So that's a big part of it too. It's just tracking incorrectly is also going to be a potential culprit there. And these people who think they're eating 2,600 to 2,500 calories in bulking while being active might actually be eating 3,000 or more. Not as uncommon as you might think, because they're not tracking stuff the way as closely as they really think they are. All right, and I've seen this happen before. All right, next question. Hi Jason, I'm considering buying Nike Romaleos or Adidas Adipowers weightlifting shoes. I have Adipowers, by the way. I'm not a competitive lifter. I just lift for my own enjoyment for the health benefits. What would you recommend, and are they worth it? These are both very reputed shoes. Yes, they can be a little on the expensive side, but asking if something's worth it, it depends on what your budget looks like. If you're scraping by and you're looking at a $150 pair of shoes for lifting in the gym, and that seems like a lot of money to you right now, and you're not going to compete in anything, I wouldn't worry about it. All right, I wouldn't worry about it. But, you know, if you spend $200, $300 every month on just entertainment, and that's your entertainment budget. I know people who spend $500, $600 every month on their entertainment or more. All right, if that's your entertainment budget or something, and you look at $150, that's no big deal. These are shoes I'll use in gym all the time because your cash flow and your disposable income is high enough that it's not a problem. I see no issue with you going ahead and grabbing a pair. They will let you squat a little deeper. The whole point of these lifting shoes is that they put your heels into a position that allows you to squat deeper depending upon your personal anatomy. People who struggle with depth due to hip structure, other things, can oftentimes go 2 or 3 inches deeper on a squat purely by adding a pair of shoes like this. And it has to do with your individual biomechanics. And some people benefit from these shoes more than others. But if you feel like you would like to get a little deeper on your squats than you're getting with flat-heeled shoes, you can't get quite as deep as you really would ideally like for your overall strength development, mobility, and you have the disposable income, a good pair of squat shoes or weightlifting shoes isn't a bad investment. Now, if you are on a tighter budget, but you still want that, there are cheaper shoes available. There are cheaper weightlifting shoes. You'll look on Amazon, you can find stuff sometimes as cheap as $50. So it just depends on what your budget looks like as to whether they're worth it. Were my Adipowers worth the $200 I paid for them at the time? Yeah, they absolutely were because I used them in competition. Money well spent. All right, next question. How would you recommend the average person do research on their own regarding fitness and nutrition? I don't think enough people know how to get to the truth on their own. That is, getting the most up-to-date research on any given topic. IG or EMO is really bad for me. Is HIIT superior to LISS for muscle preservation? I know you've covered questions like these on your channels, but just some examples off the top of my head. Quite frankly, it's going to be difficult for the average person sometimes to do this. It can totally be done. And you know, that's kind of the one things I get a lot of people are like, oh man, Jason just uses Google to find info. Yeah, but I've been reading books and studying this stuff for decades. Google is a more recent invention, and it's a fantastic invention. Yeah, you can find everything with Google. You can find what every top expert in the world says on any given topic. You can read their stuff. You can read studies. You can find all the knowledge that you need, yeah, using Google. Of course you can. You got to know how to do the right search terms. You got to learn how to sift through data. And here's what I would say. You asked a question about GMOs. When you're going to research data, I don't go to other people like me who are distributing the data. I go find the raw data, okay? Because I don't need an intermediate who does the same thing I do. And I would recommend, if you guys really want to research it, and the thing is, it takes time, and that's the thing. I take the time to do this stuff and pass this information on for people who have less free time. People who maybe only have 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day to watch a video here and there. For people who want to do their own research and they don't mind reading for a couple hours a day online, you can go check all this stuff. As far as the GMO stuff goes, don't go read conspiracy websites. Don't read kooky stuff. Go find the sources. Find what the top dietitians in the world are saying. Find what the actual data says, and use some common sense. With a lot of this stuff, yeah, we can look at the data, but some things require some common sense. Like research what GMO actually means, what it is, with some basic reading before you jump into something like GMO research, because otherwise a lot of the people who discuss GMOs, the laymen, don't actually seem to even know what GMOs are, the history of them, where they come from, what the idea behind it is. Like, they literally don't even know what it is sometimes, and yet they're going to write whole articles bashing it, and they don't even know anything about the topic, and that's the interesting thing. So just using that as an example, you should probably, any topic like that, you should, if you're interested in knowing it, you need to go get a baseline understanding and research that independent of opinions. You need to go out and get a scientific view of what GMOs actually are before you can get into a discussion and debate of understanding, people debating if they're good or bad. Okay? It is that simple. Before you go read a bunch of hippie pages or people who don't even really understand what GMOs are, because people come up with crazy terms that they clearly don't, you can tell they don't know anything about them. Or they'll focus on one little aspect of one GMO company somewhere, and they honestly think there's only one company in the world doing it, and they only make like 2 or 3 types of products. Again, it's that it'll get you really confused. So the main thing you want to look at is go look at all the scientific data. Look at what different experts are saying. If you want to look at what the nutrition data is, start following some of the people who are in the trenches on the research for any given area. Go look at what they're saying. Some of these professors, some of these researchers, people who really want to get to the truth of it, look at what they're saying. And a lot of people have these ideas that all these people are just guys and lab coats. You know, you'll see C.T. Fletcher call them E equals MC square mofos, but a lot of these guys lift. A lot of them work with top-level athletes. They're not just a guy who sits in a lab. And that's what people need to understand the difference. These are oftentimes, some of these researchers are working with real athletes, and elite level athletes sometimes outside of just doing their normal research. So they are boots on the ground, and some of them lift, some of them train. So it's not always about the fact that they're just doing research, and people need to understand a lot of these guys actually do work with people. So you go look at someone like Brad Schoenfeld or Alan Aragon or any of these people who I might look into who are known here in the fitness world. You need to understand these people aren't just researchers who are disconnected from what's going on. These are people who are part of the fitness world, part of the fitness community, part of the lifting community, who want people to have access to the best information, and that's why they do some of the research and things that they do. There's a good way to find sources. But it's difficult. I don't really know the easy way to do that, because I'm just so used to doing it. I don't know how to tell people to get started. I've been doing it for decades. Alright guys, but that's the end of part 1. I don't want to run these longer than about 20 minutes, so I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.